This is the fatherhood experience. Turn it up, cause tonight you'll learn how to leave behind the average dad life. This the fatherhood experience. It's time to lead my family and become the father figure I deserve to be. The fatherhood experience.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fatherhood Experience, where we help men leave the average dad life behind and become powerful fathers. I'm your host, Jason Priest. I've got a fantastic interview for you guys today. But before we dive in, just want to give a big shout out to you guys who have been following us for a while and supporting our mission of growing this show and helping it get into the ears of more men so that they can become powerful fathers. What I ask of you is if you get any value out of today's show, man, and I'm going to tell you right now, you guys are going to get a ton of value with our guest today. If you get any value, if it makes you think a little bit, makes you challenges you a little bit, maybe even makes you laugh, just share the show, get it into the ears of more men, tell one man in your life that could potentially help change his life and get him closer to the man he knows he's capable of becoming. With me today, I have Mr. Johnny Sirpilla. I hope I didn't butcher that. Sirpilla, legend in the RV industry. I'm excited to get that story as well, but owner in many businesses and founder of Encourage LLC and the author of Life is Hard, But I'll Be Okay, The Power of Hope, Emerging Through Pain and Learning to Live with Gratitude. He is a member on numerous boards and a professional speaker to businesses, communities, and universities about managing thoughts, leading yourself to productive choices, and framing each challenge in your life as an opportunity for more self-reflection and growth. I love it, dude. I am excited for this. Johnny, how are you today, man? I'm excited to dive in.
I am doing really well, Jason. Thanks for having me on. And you did butcher it a little bit. It's okay. Sirpilla.
Sirpilla. Okay. I usually clarify before, and I was like, oh shit, I forgot. So I'm going to.
That was on me. I should have done it too.
It's okay. What's up, man? I'm excited for this. You and I have had a great conversation prior to the show, so let's dive straight in, man. Share a little bit about your backstory, man, and how we can launch this thing with some momentum, because I'm pumped.
Awesome. Well, first, I got to say that I love the name of your podcast. I mean, the Fatherhood Experience. It was not easy for me to get the title of being a dad. And so I fought hard for it. And so it took me a long time to earn the right to be on a podcast like yours. So I appreciate being here. For sure. And I have to say, I just love what you're doing on self-reflection, the social media breaks, really all of that. And my book is really a lot about mental health and focusing largely there and getting our minds right. And so, for me, I've spent a lot of time in disbelief that I'm actually a dad now, even though I've been a dad now for 27 years, because in the early years, I could never really get my head around it. I kept thinking, damn, I am really a dad. I got this awesome responsibility and this awesome role. And so, it came with a lot of probably angst and anxiety. I'm a guy with anxiety. I'm an active thinker. That was my early title that I gave myself before a doctor said I had anxiety. I just thought I thought a lot.
Sure.
But, for me, I always wondered, I can't picture myself being a biological dad. I can picture myself being a dad, but the issue of biology, for some reason, I struggled with that. And so when we had struggles with that, which I'll talk about, that really kind of resonated with me. Like there was just a little something back there saying that this awesomeness of being a dad might be a little hard to get my hands around.
Okay. Love it, dude. And let me just say this. Okay. So with the dad definition, and I know that everybody doesn't feel this way, but because we are so big on, you heard my little punchline, leave the average dad life behind and become a powerful father. For me, being a dad and being a father are two different things. And I think that anybody can be a dad, but it takes hard work and consistent effort to be a father. And again, I know that it's a loose definition, but that's my definition, right? A dad is, like when you and I chatted a little bit before the show, anybody can be a dad because you can go reproduce and not truly become a father figure in your child's life, right? And we're seeing a lot of that these days. In fact, the majority of the youth crime that's committed these days and the issues that we're having at that level with this generation are because these kids aren't growing up with a father figure in their home. It's somebody that's actually leading them and teaching them, what it's like and leading them through life on core values and everything else that fathers bring into the picture. And so I don't know what your take is on that, but for me, being a father is like the thing that I cherish most in life. It's the ultimate responsibility, but it's also the ultimate opportunity for me to pass on my bloodline and make sure that I'm leading my children, my two boys in a way where they're going to be contributing positive members of society that give back and want to do good for the world. And so, like I told you before, we waited 10 years before we had kids, and I wasn't quite ready. I wanted to be the cool aunt and uncle. And when I finally decided that like, it's time to embrace this and step up and be a true father, I take it so seriously, man. So I resonate with your message big time.
Yeah, I love what you said, man. It really hits me. I was blessed with an incredible dad. Somebody who, really took it seriously. I was raised with really loving and committed parents, and, they were really good to us. But what they said, and this always stuck with me, and I did the same thing with my kids, is that what they expected back from us in terms of honoring our name, integrity, honesty, hard work, character, all those things. They said, we could never spoil you materially, because what we expect back from you is so much greater than what we have the ability to give you.
I love
and
that.
So, that weighed on me a little bit, because it was a lot of pressure from two type A driven parents, but I love the clarity that it created for me. And for me, life was easy, really, until it wasn't. And I learned that my parents had really planted a seed that I needed, it turns out, for my own survival. And it caused me to have wisdom to really seek help when my life was falling apart. And that's what this book is about, is those struggles. And, so I've written a book that really demonstrates how resilience can really create exactly what you need in darkness, when we overuse our mind at times, and when we take advantage of the resources around us instead of self-medicating and just trying to survive, right? And so, for me, the seeds were planted by my parents of what we have to do in this life, and really what it means to be a parent. And I love your distinction between dad and father. It's significant.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so it's crazy, because like I come from a exact opposite. I had a very dysfunctional family. My dad is very much a part of my life now, but we had a very rocky relationship. My parents got divorced at, I think I was like 2 or something. And my dad got a job transfer to Texas that brought the whole family to Texas. But my mom was an alcoholic. She smoked in the house. I lost her when she was 49 and I was 25. So I got punched in the mouth by life really quick. And I was at 25, I got married with my wife, and I was young and dumb. I was in no place to become a parent at 25. And the silver lining for us waiting was that I grew up really quick, and I learned what it was like to actually be a man before reproducing and bringing children into the world. And so it's funny how, different paths in life can result in the same thing, right? When you realize the importance of the task at hand of raising children. Because like you mentioned earlier, man, like, there's so many people out there that have kids because it's the thing to do, but they're not truly ready to be a father. It's the ultimate responsibility, in my opinion. And so I want to ask you this before I lose thought of it, because I know we're going to dive into a lot of the mindset stuff. I know we're going to dive into a lot of the mental health stuff, because I'm excited to unpack that. But the RV thing, tell me that. Like, it's when I got your one sheet from the podcast company, and we got connected. Everything was the mental health, the book, and then there's this like little side RV thing. I'm like, okay, like I got to ask about that. So where did that come in? What's the legend in the RV industry? I would like to hear more about that.
Absolutely. So I was born into the RV industry. So my dad was one of the founding dealers in the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
One of the first dealers in the RV industry. And so I grew up, working at my dad's dealership. And working hard. By about the age of 10, he said, okay, you're good labor here. So I did every job in the dealership. And then my dad picked my major. He said, you're going to be an accounting major. And I went off to college, and dutiful Italian kid, I said, okay, Pops, and I'll do that. And so I did that, got my undergraduate degree in accounting, deferred grad school for a little while, and didn't actually do that till we had a baby, and then had 2 more during those 2 years. And my dad brought me back to the RV business. I was living in Chicago, living a good life, working, climbing the corporate ladder in a big firm. And he said, it's time to come home. So I was in the RV industry, absolutely loving it. Not the lifestyle. I'm not an RVer, but I loved the idea of, RVs keep the families together. And so back in 2003, I was 36 years old, And I was one of the first people approached by Camping World to buy my dealership and then help lead the roll up of buying other dealerships across the country.
Oh, wow.
And so I did that. I sold my business at 36. I later became president at Camping World for a long time. And then I retired as chief business development officer. After our IPO on my 50th birthday, I decided to leave the industry that I had been in for 30 years. And I felt like I was now grown up enough to maybe chase my dreams and do what I wanted to do, which is making an impact on people, sharing my lessons of leadership. You know, we grew a really large, amazing company. I had over 10,000 employees, and I was blessed to lead with other, amazing executives. And I learned a lot about the industry on a national scale. I certainly knew it on a local and regional scale in my childhood and when I was running my own dealership. But then I got to be part of, leading a couple hundred stores, and it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, that sounds like it, man. That sounds very cool. And it's like you took like a massive shift in life. Like that's, I would say most people that were in that, like that's what you just keep doing, right? So how did you what was the big shining moment? Like, okay, I'm done with this. Like, it's time to go do what I really, really want to do. Was there something that happened, a significant moment, or was this kind of just a buildup for you to say, you know what, it's time to hand the keys over on this and go do what I'm most passionate about?
It was a little bit of prayer and reflection. We had worked for 15 years at Camping World and talking about going public. We did that, like I said, on my 50th birthday. And just leading up to that, I was feeling that it was maybe time to go do something else. And I worked about 9 more months after the IPO and realized that my time there was done. I had served the purpose I think that I was meant to serve in that company. I got to lead at the highest level. I was honored by the authority and the opportunities that I was given to grow and learn and lead so many thousands of people. But then, turning 50, my dad got sick with cancer in his 50s. Life got really hard for him with his health. And then he passed away when I was in my late 30s. And I realized that I'm not done defining who I need to be in this lifetime. And with the career time that I have left, with the living time that I have left, I want to follow my heart. And so that's what I chose to do. And I went and reinvented myself and started a small family office that I self-fund and buy into companies, have some amazing partnerships. And I just get behind projects that speak to me and are really difference makers. And so that's what my company today, Encourage, is all about.
I love that, man. I love it. It's very similar to what I did. I was working in the nursing world and the corporate wellness world, started in the ICU, went into corporate wellness, and I had a very dark moment. I mean, I just came to a realization. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, there's no way that I'm ever going to be able to give the value back to the world that I know I'm capable of if I just stay here. Like, I'm stuck. It was for me, it was an unfulfillment thing, almost like I'm just going to work. I'm going through the motions of life, and I can't do that. I know that the impact that I'm capable of is way beyond what I can do here. And so I very much resonate with that, man. Like I felt empty inside, and I don't know if you had a similar feeling, but it's like, there's so much more for me, right? I know there's more, and there's got to be more to life than this. I'm not fulfilled, and that's why I pulled the trigger. So love that. Let's get into the book a little bit, because I want to hear a little of the backstory. I know you sent me some literature, and I read up a little bit, and I love some of what I read in there. And I know that mental health is such a, like you and I talked before, it's a topic that's not talked about enough, especially with men. I'm with our community, man, and we say this all the time, like men are taught at a very young age that, big boys don't cry. We don't show emotions. You're supposed to be brave and confident, and you're not supposed to show, that you're sad. Rub some dirt on the wound. It'll be okay. Get up. You're not hurt. Get up and keep running. It's fine. In athletics, this is kind of mentality that, like, we're almost indoctrinated into this culture of like men are not allowed to have mental problems or depression or anxiety, like you mentioned. And that's very taboo. And I know mental health is that really for both men and women. it's not talked about enough. And so I want to get into the book, and I want to unpack mental health and get your take on it, because it's such a, you cannot be a complete man without mental and physical health. And for us, it's mental health, it's physical health, it's spiritual health, it's emotional health. All of those things create the complete man. And your mental fortitude, your physical fitness is a direct reflection of your mental fortitude, is what it is. And so I want to know, from your standpoint, let's just start unpacking it. Where do you want to start with the book, and really kind of your take on mental health and what you're trying to help your message get out there to the world?
So first, my take on mental health is I was blessed with all those norms that you say, the way that a young man and a boy is conditioned. I was not conditioned that way. Maybe one of the reasons why I love being a little countercultural, because I was raised by a dad that said, "Johnny, let it out, cry." He was telling me that when I was standing on the altar, and I missed my wife walking down the aisle because I was doubled over. I was crying so hard.
I did the same damn thing.
He just kept saying, "Johnny, let it out, let it out." And I'm like, "Pops, I am. I mean, it's all out." Yeah. But all of a sudden, I'm looking and I'm staring at her feet because I need to stand up and see the woman that walked down this incredibly long cathedral aisle.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. I was humiliated after that, but I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay.
Yeah. And you know what? With me, everyone expected it, right? So I think I wasn't humiliated because people knew me so well. They're like, "Yeah, Johnny's
he's a crier." Yep, I love it.
He's a crier. And so, I think I kind of easily led into when I finally understood that I had a problem, that my active thinking wasn't just I think a lot, or Johnny pushes hard and he has to get all A's and he has to succeed in business and everything. And he's got to help people, and that it was really a little bit more than that. And so I was not shy that I needed help. And when that help came is my wife and I'm married to my college sweetheart. We've been married 31 years. We have had just an amazing relationship from the beginning. And it was really easy, as I said before, until it wasn't. And that's when we decided that we were ready to have a family. And as a full-blooded Italian, for me, family is everything. And our book recounts the years in kind of memoir style from ages 25 to 33 when we struggled to build a family. And we really realized that our emotions and the hardship that we were handed through unexplained infertility was gut-wrenching, and it really made us question, if we're not going to be parents, what are we going to be? Just this career couple? And we both had amazing careers. My wife was an absolute rock star in the pharmaceutical industry. She was killing it, but we were missing something big. And so it took us years, and then we were blessed through infertility treatments and in vitro fertilization with triplets. And my wife had a tough pregnancy because, as you can imagine, carrying three is very physically demanding. And she was so sick for that first trimester and lost about 15 pounds. And that second trimester came, and then, she gained about 15 pounds. So now she's just, she's 5-6 months pregnant, and she's, back to her starting weight. I mean, it kind of really wasn't making sense how much of a toll this was taking on her body. And our babies were born premature, and Nicholas, Mary, and Peter passed away. And we went into a dark, dark place. And after years of infertility, we find ourselves needing to deal with a funeral and all that went with that. And, fortunately, we were already seeing a psychologist, Dr. Barb Fordyce, who's a dear friend and a partner of mine today. We do a lot of public speaking together today and work with companies. And we were seeing her during the infertility years because that was so tough. Many infertility couples don't end up having a kid, not because the treatments don't work, but because they end up getting divorced. And there's a lot of pressure. And then, of course, over half the couples that lose a child end up in divorce. And so we clung tightly to Barb, and she gave us cognitive behavioral techniques that really, Jason, I mean, I'm telling you, they were needed for survival. They were needed for getting out of bed and primarily, working to reframe our thoughts. And so that's where I realized when I had the power to reframe thoughts that can work for me, as opposed to the many, many thoughts that I was having working against me, laying on the ground at the cemetery in a dark place and feeling like life can't get better. Excuse me, can't get better. I started to realize that I needed to change those thoughts.
I can't imagine, man. I can't imagine. First of all, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I will tell you, with a deep wound like that, it's very, for the listeners, for those of you guys who are out there just heard Johnny's story, put yourself in the shoes of that and of him. And when you're going through life with the minimal things, the minimal challenges, right? You're not the lack of motivation to make your health a priority, the things that you feel like you're battling on a day-to-day basis. When Johnny's talking about reframing your mind and your thoughts, this is a powerful, powerful practice. And if him and his wife, if you and your wife can get through a challenging situation like that, by working on your mindset, because you and I know that mindset is king. Like it determines everything in our lives, right? If you can manifest that, you can do it, right? Like if you truly believe you can do it, you're capable of doing it, and you put in the work, it'll happen for you. And so when you share a story like that, it's very eye-opening, but it's great for listeners who have a little bit of a woe is me or a victim mentality, because it puts you in his shoes. Because I'm a big gratitude guy. I practice gratitude every single day to start my day. And for me, the first thing I put down in my gratitude journal every single day is the fact that I woke up, I'm alive. I think more men especially need to incorporate gratitude on a consistent basis in their life, for stories like yours, man, because we often take life for granted, and what you just shared really brings things into perspective. So I appreciate you sharing that, man.
One of the chapters in the book is called "Why Not Us?" And I entitled it that because so many people kept saying after the funeral or at the funeral, I'm sure you're wondering why me. And really, Jason, I really never thought that. Susan didn't either, because I was raised with a clear understanding that bad things happen. It could be worse. Look around, look at all the terrible things happening in the world.
Yes.
I never thought I would be exempt from that. I never thought I deserved to be exempt from that. So one blessing that we had was that both of us thought that way. So we didn't get stuck in the why me. We literally lived in why not us. And we would say that. We'd correct people and say, oh, no. We are not exempt, nor do we feel special, or that we should, watch other horrible things happen to those around us, and that we're going to go down a golden path that it's not going to touch our lives. And so we really saw it as our cross to bear. And then the cognitive restructuring that we did, right? That really helped, because that's the technique that really is successfully used to help people change the way that they think. When it's used for stress management or overcoming trauma. And for us, we saw an opportunity in post-traumatic growth. That was a chance that we could really reframe where we're at. How do we take this loss, grow from it, and more importantly, Jason, find beauty in it? Because again, probably being the sappy guy that I am, I was not going to allow Nicholas, Mary, and Peter's life to be one of tragedy, one of sadness, because I was not going to define their lives and their significance on us by the time in between their birth certificate and their death certificate.
Right.
It was life-changing, and it was beautiful in so many ways. And there's something, I'm trying to find the right word, but there's something to be said for holding your child for their entire lifespan in your arms and being there for their birth and watching them take their last breaths, close their eyes, and pass. That we could either be stuck in the moment that was the worst experience of our life, or we could look at it as we got to be Nicholas, Mary, and Peter Sirpilla's parents, and we got to experience their entire time here on earth, and we watched their entrance into heaven. And that just worked for us so much better than feeling cheated and screwed out of a life of parenting them and loving them. And I'm not saying I'm clearly not saying that I didn't have my days of just begging God for, give me a year with them, give me 5 years with them. But what it taught me and what it taught my wife was that, in this world, we always want more.
Mm-hmm.
And we landed on the thought that we're going to be thankful for what we had. And we don't need more of Nicholas, Mary, and Peter to have them significantly change us. And so we're going to be thankful, and we're going to look at it that way. And from there, we were able to move forward.
Man, you got me to cry a little bit, dude. I'm a crier, and you brought tears to my eyes. So I'm just going to tell you that. I can't imagine. My wife and I, we had our first son, had back-to-back miscarriages. Can't imagine going full term and losing kids. So, dude, you brought tears. Congrats. So let's transition, because I want to hear what's next. I want to hear you have 3 beautiful children now, and I love your perspective. I just do. That was awesome. So what came next? I'm ready for the rest of the story. You lost these, you gained perspective. You guys grew as a couple. I can't imagine you didn't get stronger as a couple immensely through those challenges. So what came next? Where did your next children come in, and how did you even approach that with the trauma that you just experienced? Because I know that with what you just described, you guys' mindset was in a really good place after that, after you were able to grieve and grow from that. So when you're going in and saying, all right, we're going to do this again, like, how does that even happen? Because my wife, our miscarriages, one was pretty early on. One of them was at 4 months, and we actually found out the sex. It was going to be a girl. I have 2 boys. I always wanted a girl. So I felt ripped after that. How did you even make the decision to go into that again after what you dealt with?
So first, I'm sorry to hear that you've gone through some of this, and those feelings of hope that gets ripped away.
I don't want to compare it to your story, man, but it just made sense to bring it in, because I know what it feels like. It sucks. I have a friend, and I'm just going to put this out there too. I have a friend who they went full term with his only boy. He has 3 girls now, and his only boy, and as a dad, you want a boy, right? Like, we all want a boy, and so they did a full term birth. And after the boy was born, and they didn't know this until he was born, they found out that his brain matter, the white and the gray, were reversed, and he was an unviable human. And they had to make the decision to withdraw treatment. And so I've had that in my life, man, but to do it in a trio is just, I can't imagine. So I'd love to hear more.
So what we did, and I can connect with that couple. Even though our babies were preemies, we had some decisions to make on support and what we were going to give them. And I write about that in the book. But for us, our next step was our 3 closest friends were all pregnant and due when we were due. And so for us, we had to shift gears to be there for them. So the day after the funeral, we went down to Florida for a week to let Susan rest and heal. And, it was a crazy time. Her milk production was coming in. We had, a lot going on. But we came home for a scheduled C-section for our best friends. And the day after we got home, they had their daughter. And what we knew that we had to do is be there for these 3 couples in their joy as they were there for us in our sorrow. And they were incredible to us. And so in our mourning, we found throwing our emotions into their happiness really helped, because there was hope there. We felt a connection to these 3 families and to those 3, really special babies that are all, grown adults today. And so that was step 1 is, it's not all about us. And I know it was early on, and it could have been about us, and they would have all understood that. They would all have understood if we were not at the hospital, the same hospital that we had our kids at, in the same labor and delivery unit that we were in 2 weeks before. And then, 2 months before. They would have all understood if we weren't there, but we couldn't do that. So number 1, we had to stand up for others and be there for them. And that gave us strength. It was hard. I'm not saying, Jason, that we skated through it.
No.
And yes, leaving them, we'd run to the cemetery and we'd go lay on that ground. And then we'd get strength. And so through that, we had hope. We went back to in vitro. I'll save a lot of details for the book because the story's far too long to get to through on this podcast. And then had another failed pregnancy. And then we turned to adoption. And, it was me that kind of pushed for that. My wife felt that she could do it. And we had all these frozen embryos, which is a whole nother challenge that we had because of the life-threatening condition that my wife developed. But I said, we're going to give your body a break. And so we tried international adoption, long stories associated with that. And then, as you know, my oldest son is adopted. And as I have told the kids over the years, I know one of them is, but I can't remember which one.
I love that.
And I talk in the book about, getting our brains around what society says about adoption, what people say innocently and lovingly that, I give you a lot of credit for adopting. I don't think I could ever do that and take somebody else's baby. So there was a compliment there that, that we could do something that they couldn't, but it's also a message that there's maybe something less about that level of parenting, or that way to become a parent, or those that would say, that's a good idea until you can have one of your own. That's awesome to adopt one.
Oh gosh.
And again, all well-intended, innocent statements.
When you're in a fragile state, though, those innocent statements are not well received generally, unless your mind is strong, man.
That's right. And when we were handed Bo, just like we were handed Nicholas, Mary, and Peter, you get a newborn. He was a day old. That boy was mine in a second. My wife felt the exact same way. And so, when they would say, one of your own, you're processing. And again, as an active thinker, like, one of my own, this baby is my own. So do others look at me as not his dad, not his real dad, right? And even those words used, and I know we live in a culture today of saying how much words matter, and they do, but, innocent, how tall is Bo's real dad? And, my reply, and that was one of my best friends who I love that man today. He's my son Stone's godfather. And we laugh about it because my reply came to him quickly. I'm 6'1". Why do you ask? I am Bo's real dad. And so, getting our heads around that, it didn't take long because love overshadows all that. And we were comfortable being a little poster child family, maybe in our town for adoption, that if people learned a little bit more about it and created clarity, awesome. If they didn't, that's cool too. We were a family of 3, and we had been certain that God created Bo Sirpilla to be ours. He sent him through another woman, and we are grateful to her. But it kind of ended there. And then from there, life got really hard again. Some crazy things happened, some more failed adoptions, and some crazy surprise pregnancies that produced our daughter Bella and our son Stone in about a 19-month span. And, we were soon a family of 3. And, then I had to wrestle with these other thoughts. Again.
And these were natural pregnancies, the surprises?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Just,
wow.
Being shocked as hell that, me kind of noticing my wife's body was changing.
You're like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah. And I commented to her.
Imagine, man.
Yeah. One day she was getting out of the shower, and I'll be a gentleman here, but she was getting out of the shower, and I said, hey, you look a little different than you did when you walked in that shower. And she kind of laughed, and I said, when was your period due? I don't know. It's been months. I'm like, what?
You're like, wait a second, wait.
Months.
That's not right.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, she was 3 months pregnant with our daughter Bella before we figured it out. And
what a blessing.
Yeah. So, she spent 5.5 months in bed. It was a really, really rough pregnancy. Another preemie. Bella was 5 weeks early. And, And then our son, Stone, Bella was about 10 months old when Stone was conceived. Again, a couple months along before my wife realized that
She's
time
late
hadn't
again.
come. Yeah. And,
That's so
and,
awesome.
and so, what happened then is, even after Bella was born, again, all those comments coming back that, oh, you finally have one of your own. And gosh, doesn't it feel amazing? And, Jason, it didn't feel any different.
I can't imagine it would.
And in fact, I think because I kept leaning into what society put around biological connections, I was thinking that day it was supposed to be better. And I had this awful thought that day that I couldn't articulate, but I felt off. And what I realized was I was having a thought and words were coming to my mind that I didn't like. And it was during the middle of the night Bella was born. And that thought was, these exact words were my thought. She seems nice, but she's not Bo. And I thought, like, what the hell does that mean? Like, why am I having that thought?
As a father with 2 biological children, I just want you to know that sounds really out there, man. So I can imagine you're second guessing while you're thinking that. Like, that sounds like so outlandish that you would even think that. So that's funny.
Yeah. So my conclusion was, I'm either really deficient at being a biological parent, that I'm not putting all to this, like I've made this great accomplishment, when all I did was have an amazing night with my wife 9 months earlier, like that I had done something, special. And even though that was unattainable for us for so many years, biology didn't define how I felt. And so then I realized, okay, I don't think I'm deficient in that. I think it's just that biology isn't going to define my relationship with my daughter, right, or my relationship with my son. And I just need to get to know her. Right. And the boys have laughed over the years when I say that, Bella was my favorite. And I'd say that to them and they always knew, because I say, fellas, I want you to watch your sister when I say that. She's going to learn from us how to be treated by a man. And when I would say that, Bella's face would light up. And the boys always knew that when Dad said that, what we were doing is we're teaching Bella and we're showing Bella that we're going to we're going to show you how to be treated by a man, and you're going to be holding a guy in your life to a super high standard.
That's amazing.
And the boys accepted that, and Bella loved that feeling. And I got to say, there is something pretty crazy and special about a dad's connection to his girl. And so, I realized that, I'm just so damn happy to be a dad, and all these outside voices and thoughts and words, they were messing with me. And if I just focused on my kids, I was good.
Yep. No, it's great. My analogy there is like what you and I talked about on the social media piece. As long as I stay off Twitter, I'm good. Right? Like, I don't need all this outside nonsense for me to feel validated. I love that, man. No, this is what a great story. You guys got to go get his book. Go get Johnny's book. We'll plug that at the end. All right. That was amazing. I want to shed some light. I want to shed some light on what you're doing right now, because I think there's so many directions we could take this, man. And you've got a lot of value to offer to the world just with your story alone. And so I'm excited about your book. I'm definitely going to dive in. However, I want to talk about what you're doing right now, because I know that leadership's a big thing for you. And I know the mental health piece is a big thing for you, and reframing thoughts, because obviously that was a big value add while you had the psychologist going through the trauma that you did. And so what are you sharing right now, or what's your best advice right now to the men out there that are listening to this show that might be struggling with the inner demons that we all go through? I will tell you, in my own life, it takes me being very proactive about working on that. There's a history of depression in my family. There's a history of alcoholism on my mom's side. And I've tended to go that way at different points in my life. And so for me, self-awareness is very huge. The more self-aware I am, I feel like the more ammunition I have to create the change that I need to, or at least make the moves I need to avoid going down some of those dark paths. And so I want to shed some light on that, on what you're doing right now, and what is your best advice to guys that, because you've obviously been through some really, really dark and tough times. And so I know a big part of your book is the mental health side of things and really reframing. And so what kind of advice, what kind of things would you share with the listeners right now who might be going through some tough times? Because this world we live in right now, it obviously is challenging, and mental health is at an all-time crisis, is at an all-time high in our country.
Well, first of all, I think that there was a very direct connection in my life between being a business leader and being a dad. What I realized is that we have responsibilities. I'm going to first touch on this from a business perspective, and then I'll switch over to the dad side. As leaders, if you accept the title as director, manager, supervisor, boss, vice president, president, whatever it is, and you want all that goes with that, the bigger check, the bigger responsibility, the opportunity to grow in a company, you got to realize that, you have a responsibility on you as a male or female leader to impart goodness on your team so that when they go home to what's really important, being a dad, a mom, a brother, a sister, a grandfather, grandmother, caregiver, friend, whatever your real purpose in life is, right? Not your employment, but your real purpose, that we send our workers out there to be the best they can be. Because if we create a culture in our workplace that is negative, that it is pointing out failures and insecurities, and we are controlling of our employees, when they leave and go home with that negative mindset, they carry what we imparted on them in an 8 or 10 or 12-hour workday, and they go home and they take that out on those that they feel that they have control over. Yeah. And whether it's through violence, it's through, self-medication and alcohol or drugs, or negative words to family and friends, that's on us as employers, that we are setting a stage for that ugliness in the world. So number one, this all taught me, because I was at such a dark place and I had to go back to running my company after the funeral.
With thousands of employees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at first it was just my family business, but then later taking those same thoughts when I had 10,000 employees and realizing that, of course, there was a large executive team and many other capable people. It wasn't all about Johnny, but I realized that I think I was a little countercultural. I had a different view than some of my colleagues when it came to the impact that we have on each other and the responsibility that we have. And so that changed me as a business leader. And so when I do a lot of public speaking today and lectures to companies or universities or whatever setting that I'm in, leadership is what I love to talk about, because we have to lead our own life first. The hardest person to lead is yourself, right? Because we judge others by their actions. We judge ourselves by our intentions. I'm a big fan of John Maxwell. So his leadership principles, I think, are golden.
Top notch. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for me, that kind of, I took my dad thinking into my business life. Now I'll flip it back to the dad side. I think that any dad that's out there that is struggling, and I say this respectfully, and I say this as a guy that, like I said, struggles with the thoughts in my own mind, but it's not all about you, dude. Yeah. It just isn't. And, to the guy that's struggling and he is a husband or a dad and he's deficient on either of those duties, it's just not all about what we want. Mm-hmm. And, my dad used to say something awesome that hurt my feelings like crazy when I was a kid, but it was awesome. All kind of awesomeness. If I would say something selfish, my dad would say, "I love me. Who do you love?" And he would be kissing himself like on his arm as he would say it. "I love me, Johnny. Who do you love?" And I knew when he said that to me, that I had said something pretty selfish and narrow-minded that was all about me.
Yeah.
And I was showing very clearly that I love me and more than I love others.
That's good.
So I would first tell a dad to really look in a mirror. And I was a very imperfect dad. We kind of laughed when we'd go to parent teacher conferences. And I would tell, teachers that, God did the perfect thing sending us imperfect children because we're imperfect parents and we are imperfectly fit together. So when my kid does something wrong in that classroom, if he disrespects someone, I'm not the dad that is going to defend that. I want a phone call from you. I don't care how little or how small. I want to know, because if my kid gets in trouble at school, God help them when they get home, because they're going to be in more trouble.
Right.
And we're going to talk about what they just did. So I don't want you to think that I think that I'm raising perfect kids that make no mistakes. They're human. They're going to make mistakes, but I want to deal with those and I want to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as dads, I think when we don't fully recognize, and you don't have to go through what we went through to become parents, you don't have to have loss. You could be fully blessed, but realize that, am I as committed to these souls that with God's help we created, and through God's grace he gave us?
Mm-hmm.
Are we really, really doing our best for them? And, one of the things I did, Jason, when my kids were born, because again, I couldn't believe I was a dad, is I started writing love letters to them. And I would write these love letters. And I knew that when they were 18 years old, I'd bound them in a book. And I did that. And they were 200 pages plus, all single page or single space typed. And it was every year of their life of all the amazing emotions that I was having being their dad.
How frequently were you doing that?
I did it all throughout the year. I mean, sometimes I'd get on a great, roll, and in 1 week I'd write 3 times, and then 3-4 months would go by and I'd be like, shoot, Stone's letter, I haven't gotten to it yet this year. And I would throw myself into it. I'd be on flights coming home from business trips because I traveled quite a bit, and, I would just be typing away. And so, I surprised them with those. And at first, Bella and Stone, when Bo got one, thought he just got it because he's adopted, and Dad wanted to make sure that Bo was okay. And then when Bella got one, they were a little surprised, and Stone kind of even forgot then, and it was his turn 2 years later. And so those books, they carried them to college. They were at their nightstands in college. They all live in Chicago now. They're with them there in their apartments. And it was so important to me that if anything ever happened to me, I mean, the books conclude with a goodbye letter to them that I always worried about, would they know what was on my heart and my final thoughts of being their dad. And so, of course, I've lived long beyond them turning 18. But, it was important to me that they knew that the greatest thing for their mom and me was to be blessed to be their parent. And I want to hold them to a high standard of parenthood so that they pass that on to the next generation. And then, really, I think I laugh about this now at 55. I think I'm finally qualified to be a parent. Like, I'm ready to do this. And so all we can do is, hope for our grandkids that come hopefully in the future that I can be a really, really good papa because I am now qualified.
I love that, dude. What a great perspective. And, I ask because, let me ask you this. Were you doing this like on a document? Are you emailing them? I set up an email for my son when he was born, and I did a few, and I got out of it. And when I read the little literature that you sent me before our interview here, it reminded me of that. And I'm like, you know what? It's not too late. I have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I could definitely get back in that again. And so I love that you're doing that because I had started something like that. And now I'm like, maybe I need to restart that. So were you doing like an email, a document? How are you?
It was a document. It was just a simple Word document. Because remember, I started this, 26 years ago when Bo was born. So, I was probably doing it. I didn't even have a laptop back then, probably. It was on a desktop, but then with a laptop, it got easier, but it was just a Word document that was, year 1, Bo year 2, year 3. And so, every entry, was probably, 15 pages or so, that I had, maybe 20 pages. And, you can go back to that, Jason, even for your 7-year-old, you can go and get caught up on those 5 years and stop and think of those special moments, right? And your 2-year-old, shoot, I probably had times where, again, maybe it was even 9 months I hadn't written, but then I was like, everything was fresh in my mind. And what's really cool about it now is the kids will send me texts and they'll be like, Dad, just read this. And they share something. And, I forgot it, because it happened 20 some years ago or it happened 15 years ago. And they just love rereading that today, whether before they go to bed, read a chapter or two.
Yeah.
And so, it's a reminder of the gift that they are and how blessed I am to be their dad. And I know it's going to make an imprint on the way that they parent.
I love it. Oh yeah. 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, man. I very much resonate with it. I love it. I want to touch on one more thing before we close shop, because you mentioned something a minute ago when you were, for the listeners, right? For the guys that are out there struggling. And one of our big things is about making yourself the top priority in your life. And so I want to share my thought process with you and see if you can relate to it. Because I can tell we haven't talked much about the health and the fitness side of things, but I can look at you and tell that you're someone who makes yourself a priority, just in the physical side of things. And so what I want to say there is, like, when you said to the listeners, it's not all about you, dude. I love that, because it takes away from the self-centered thoughts that a lot of us have, right? It's like, how, for me, I get caught up in business, right? So like for me, I can't shut my mind off from business. And one of the big things that we teach in the fatherhood is being present in the moment for your children. I'm not a big believer in work-life balance, because I do believe, especially for business owners, and you could probably relate to this, is like, you're not going to be able to have a true balance in your life. But what you can do is you can maximize your presence while you have that quality time with your children. I believe that there is a big difference between quantity time and quality time with your children. A lot of people are, they consider spending time with their kids sitting on the couch next to them while the kid's watching TV and they're scrolling their cell phone. That's not quality time with your kids. That is not how I define quality time. And so I say all that because when you said it's not all about you, dude, I think there's something to be said about this, because what we tell our guys is, if you're not making you the number one priority in your life, like, you have to be your mental health, your physical health, everything about you has to be the top priority in your life, so that everybody else can get the absolute best version of you. If you are giving all the time and you're putting everyone else first, and you're not making your health, your mental health, your physical health, you the top priority, that means everybody in your life gets the second, third, maybe even the eighth best version of you. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of prioritizing you as a being, so that you do have the physical and mental ability to provide for your children, your family, and even your business?
So first, I want to comment on your comment on work-life balance, because I actually write about this in the book. For me, I struggle with the concept of work-life balance as well, because I realized that there was just life.
Yeah.
Right. And in the life that in the mindset that I have as a business leader was driven by the same heart as the mindset that I have as a dad, as a husband, as a friend, and that I wanted those worlds to be the same. I didn't want to be this business leader that was demonstrative and dominating and harsh, and then go home and practice goodness. Right. Right. So I wanted those to just be one life where I was really the same in both.
It's like you're split personality here if you're trying to do that. Yeah.
And you know what? As I said, I have so much time or, struggle with my own thoughts. I can't add in a duplicate version of me, right? I can barely get a handle on the one version of me. But you're right that you have to get yourself right. Like I said, you have to lead yourself before you can lead others. So I'm a firm believer in that. But I'm also a big believer in seasons of life. And what I felt was that there were going to be seasons in my life when my kids were grown that I could really turn back and focus a lot on me. And I would never want to compromise my marriage during those years. But we all know that sometimes when your kids are active and busy and travel baseball and travel basketball and football and USTA tennis and all these things that we're doing, we get that our marriage, sometimes takes a little bit of a back seat, but we got to be mindful, right, to bring it back up front. But for me, in the seasons of life, I'll give you this example that, I used to be a really avid tennis player. My wife was as well. We were golfing before we had kids. We were golfing when we were struggling to have kids. And then when we had them, I made the decision that I'm going to hang up my golf clubs, because I didn't want to lose 5 hours, be gone 6-7 hours on a Saturday from my kids. I was working a lot. And I just needed to be with them. And so I figured there's a season in life later that I could circle back around to golf. There is a time that I was traveling a lot for work, as I said. I made it a priority to always be home for their sporting events. And I was blessed, being high up in a company where I can kind of control my schedule, maybe a little bit better than others. But I would always want to make sure that for my team, that I was not going to have them come to a meeting and miss a major life event for their kid. I wanted to be very clear to them that no, I'll catch you up on the meeting. You give me your report before, I'll represent you well, and you go focus on family. And so, yes, be ready to take care of yourself and have your mind right to be right for them. But then also accept that when we have made this decision to be a dad, and more importantly, when we've committed to being a father, that some of our needs and desires are going to step aside. Now, for me, fitness, I needed to stay fit. It was a way for me to release my anxiety. So
it's a non-negotiable, right? It has to. It was. Without it, you can't be the man you are today. Is really the angle. Like without it, you're not the same Johnny, and I'm not the same Jason. It's the bottom line. Yeah.
That's right. So, I had to stay fit. And, in our 30s, when we were so busy with our kids, our late 30s, and we were turning 40, I was in better shape at 40 than I was at 30. Had a better six pack at 40 than I did at 20. And I was really into lifting weights and everything when I was 20. And then, 50 came, and, that same thing, that I got to keep pushing. But I also then, realized that the physical fitness wasn't all that I needed. I needed to learn transcendental meditation. I turned to TM, that I needed to really just twice a day commit to that. So I was taking time for myself, but I really worked to make sure that it wasn't at the expense of the people that needed me, my wife and my kids, and of course my company, and my trusted colleagues and dear friends that I worked with. But there's a lot of time in a day if we use it wisely. Take those social media breaks that you talked about.
100%.
You have plenty of time to exercise, to meditate, to struggle with your demons. And again, I've got a lot of demons that I still work through today. And I'm a big believer, as you said, in practicing gratitude. And I believe that anxiety cannot live when you have an attitude of gratitude. And so when I find myself anxious, it's the quick go-to for me to realize I'm not living in gratitude. Right. And so as long as I do that, I find that I have all that I need when I live in gratitude to be there for others and be there for my kids.
That's awesome, man. And I think what you just did, and like in summary for there, like if it's a priority to you, you'll make it happen. And I love that you're doing it so that you're not sacrificing the time with them, but you're still carving out, you're still making sure that it happens in your life. And maybe it's a restructuring of your schedule. Maybe it's doing it while they've got activities going on, but we work in an industry of excuses. And so I love that you said, if it's, that you made it happen regardless. If it's important and it's a priority, you're going to make it happen. One of our big excuses is the perceived lack of time. And I love that you mentioned the time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Some of us have priorities aligned with the man that we know we're capable of becoming. Some of us don't. And if you don't, then you're going to come up with the excuses that you don't have time to do this or that. And so I love it. This was an amazing interview, man. I want everybody to be able to get more of you. Where can we find you? Number one, let's get the book out there, because I know your book is out now. I want them to be able to find the book because I know that I'm interested in that. But where else can we get more of Johnny?
All right. I appreciate that. So the book, Life is Hard, But I'll Be Okay, is available on Amazon or anywhere online that books are sold. We have a audio version of the book, a paperback version of the book, and of course a digital version. So that's all available to you on Amazon or anywhere books are sold online. My website is encourage33.com. And so there you can find out a little bit about what I'm doing. Of course, your podcast will be posted there, and the various areas that I focus on and what's important to me in the companies that I have and that I'm blessed to work with great partners. And on Instagram, Johnny Sirpilla is my handle there. And I appreciate so much, Jason, you having me. I appreciate that we can talk about mental health. I'm a guy that at the end of the day, I like having my anxiety because it has kept my head straight. It has allowed me to recognize how I will feel if I let people down. And so I've learned to use my anxiety in my favor to have a good outcome. And if you could say I completely take it away, I'd say, please don't, because I think I need a little of it just to stay on edge to ensure that I'm always being thoughtful.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing, man. I just want to take my biggest takeaway from you is your perspective. I have loved everything about this interview. It has been an absolute honor and pleasure for us to have you on the show. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that our listeners are going to get massive value out of this. So thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to add the value you did today's show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, man.